What Remains of Edith Finch is one of those games I always knew was class, but playing it again recently honestly just cemented it for me. It's been years at this stage since the first one came out, but I will honestly say, guys, there is nothing quite like it. I mean, it's short, sure, but every single second of it is packed with detail, emotion, and honestly just some of the most creative storytelling I think I've ever seen in any game. Now, for anyone who hasn't played it, Edith Finch is a walking sim, but don't let that put you off if you're someone who prefers a wee bit more action in your games. This is less of a wander about looking at things type of walking simulator, and more of a watch an entire family history unfold in the most bizarre and heartbreaking ways type of experience. You play as Edith Finch, who is the last surviving member of her family, and you're basically just returning to your childhood home to try and piece together what actually happened to all her relatives, each of whom met a tragic and usually a pretty surreal end. The house itself is absolutely incredible. I would say it's easily one of the most memorable locations in gaming. It's massive, maze-like, and it's crammed just full of tiny little details that really do make it feel lived in. There's like secret passages, in between bedrooms, and bedrooms that are actually frozen in time, and just bits of history almost just tucked away in every corner. It's the kind of place that instantly pulls you in, and honestly, see the way the story is woven into the environment. It's actually just unreal. It's so good, like nothing is wasted, and every tiny object or scribbled note tells you something about the people who used to live here. You really get a real understanding of not only the characters, but the place itself, the house itself. The real magic of Edith Finch is in actually how it tells the story. Each and every family member's tale is presented differently, so you will be using completely unique gameplay styles that fit their personality or circumstances. So there's one moment you're flipping through a comic book style horror story. The next, you're a child imagining yourself as different animals, and then suddenly you're working in a fish factory while your mind drifts off into a fantasy world. It keeps you constantly engaged, but you never know what's coming next. And even though the game is graphically very, very pretty, it is pretty short too. There's just so much variety that it never feels like it's repeating itself, and it just moves along very, very nicely. There's a few sections that really stand out. There's one which is Lewis's section. It hit me like a ton of bricks, even though this time I knew exactly what was coming. I won't spoil it, but the way the game represents his mental state through actual gameplay and not just cutscenes is one of the most powerful things I've seen in any game I've ever played. And it's rare for a game to handle something so heavy in a way that feels this natural and impactful, but Edith Finch absolutely nailed it. And I originally played this as a new father back when it released, and there is a scene with a baby, and honestly, yeah, it's a tough one as well, but fantastically done. Visually, and I did mention this earlier, the game is aged brilliantly. The art style in this game, guys, is absolutely stunning, and the lighting and the atmosphere still holds up extremely well. Even though it's not the most graphically intense game in the world, just the way everything's presented makes it look and feel fantastic. It really feels lived in. And the soundtrack, it's always enhancing the mood without being too in your face, I guess. And while I mentioned that the game is quite short, you can finish this in, honestly guys, maybe 2 or 3 hours if even. It honestly doesn't feel like it's wasting your time. If anything, I would have actually happily played another hour or two just to get lost in the world a little bit longer. If I had to nitpick, maybe it is a little too short, but it leaves such an impact that I almost wish there was just maybe one more story, one more room to explore. But at the same time, maybe that's what makes it so powerful. It just doesn't overstay its welcome, and it just leaves you thinking long after you're done. And not a lot of game guides can do that. So yeah, What Remains of Edith Finch is still an absolute gem. It's one of those games that reminds you why this medium is so special, because it tells a story in no way that even a book or even a film could ever do. Whether you're playing it for the first time or, like me guys, revisiting it years later, it's an experience that sticks with you. It's an easy 5 out of 5. It is a masterpiece. There's no question for me about that. If you've played it recently or you haven't played it, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the review, sure, give it a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.